For 30 years, Windows was the unquestioned infrastructure of the digital world. If you owned a personal computer, you used Windows. Microsoft historically anchored its dominance to a specific metric: 1.4 billion active users. But 3 years ago, that number quietly disappeared from official corporate messaging, replaced by the much vaguer claim of over a billion users. The gap between the old 1.4 billion standard and the current baseline represents 400 million defecting users. At the same time, data shows a 196% spike in desktop Linux adoption. These two trend lines are moving in lockstep. The defection data became so severe that Bill Gates was pulled back into emergency strategy meetings, 17 years after leaving operational control of the company he built. This exodus represents a strategic crisis generated by Microsoft's own internal product decisions. The first major trigger was the TPM 2.0 requirement, a security chip mandate in Windows 11 that artificially locked out millions of perfectly functional, older computers from official support. Leaked requirements for Windows 12 suggest the lockout is accelerating. Processor and memory baselines in the next generation are projected to render 77% of the current Windows 10 user base officially obsolete. This strategy targets a stagnant PC market. For small businesses and school districts, the financial reality is brutal. They face massive, unplanned replacement costs for hardware that still performs without difficulty. Rather than accepting thousands of dollars in forced upgrades, these users discovered that their hardware wasn't the limitation, Windows was. By switching to Linux Mint and Ubuntu, they reclaimed their existing machines for the cost of a download. Beyond the hardware, Windows 11 reflects a pivot in architecture. It is no longer a traditional software product you buy. It is a subscription delivery pipeline designed to extract ongoing value from the user. This shift relies on removing user control. Microsoft has systematically eliminated the option for offline local accounts, making an internet-connected Microsoft login a mandatory condition of using your own computer. The resulting interface is saturated with unblockable start menu advertisements and relentless prompts to upgrade to Microsoft 365 or OneDrive storage tiers. This loss of system control and privacy specifically alienated professional developers. Platform usage surveys show this group migrating in waves toward Mac and Linux environments, where they can operate without corporate monitoring. This creates a downstream consequence for the entire ecosystem. Applications are now being built for Mac and Linux first, dissolving the software advantage that protected Microsoft's monopoly for decades. When an operating system stops being a tool for the user and becomes an advertising surface directed at them, the professional tier will immediately exit. The final escalation came with Recall, a flagship AI feature designed to take continuous, locally stored screenshots of everything a user does on their screen. For institutions managing patient records or privileged client data, Recall transformed Windows 11 into an unacceptable legal liability. A system that takes continuous screenshots creates a discoverable record of data that must, by law, remain private. The institutional fallout was immediate. Healthcare networks across Australia and the UK halted Windows 11 deployments after concluding that the OS architecture was in direct conflict with national privacy laws. The rejection extended to the geopolitical level. Sovereign governments began mandating full migrations away from Windows to protect national data sovereignty. South Korea, Brazil, and China are currently transitioning millions of government workstations to domestically controlled, auditable Linux distributions. By embedding continuous screen capture into the system architecture, Microsoft created specific legal conflicts that hospitals and sovereign governments could not reconcile with privacy obligations. Publicly, Microsoft's leadership remains focused on AI integration and Azure cloud growth, positioning these as the company's future while the desktop foundation below them shifts. But the hardware manufacturers who ship these machines are no longer waiting for Microsoft to fix the platform. Dell, HP, and Lenovo are now publicly validating Linux by making it the default on an increasing number of machines. This isn't a temporary detour. The historical assumption was that users who tried Linux would eventually return to Windows once they encountered technical friction. That assumption is debunked by the latest survey data. 94% of the millions who recently migrated to Linux state that they will never return to the Microsoft ecosystem. The volume of permanent defections signals that Windows is no longer viewed as mandatory infrastructure by millions of its most critical users. When a tech monopoly treats user-owned hardware as a mere extraction point, those users will exercise the ultimate veto.